The cry was not pain, but simply cold shock. It happened in the darkness of a Spartan night, perhaps around 450 BCE, just outside the great walls of Lacedaemon. An elder, hands as coarse as olive bark, reached into the small wooden cradle. This was the moment of immediate action, the infant's first, most brutal test. Newborns were not property. They were resources to be assessed. Every child born in Sparta faced this judgment. The elder's fingers traced the limbs, searching for the telltale asymmetry, the minor tremor, the breath too shallow. The symbolic motif of this system was the iron disc of the Gerousia that marked the approval or the death sentence. This system, designed to produce perfect warriors, created an internal enemy greater than any outside foe. Why did a society built on freedom for its citizens choose to extinguish its weakest so cruelly? And what evidence of this hidden cruelty remains beyond the official narrative? Was survival truly a greater prize than mercy? If you enjoy these dark histories, where stone, iron, and cold discipline shaped the ancient world, leave a like and subscribe and comment below where you're listening from. And now, back to the story. If the infant passed the iron disc, the descent began at age 7. This was the agoge, the institutional control over mind and body, a system of state-sanctioned captivity that turned boys into human weapons. They were taken from their mothers, stripped of the comforting noise of a home, and plunged into the communal barracks, the agile, or herd. The renaming was subtle. Their individual identities faded, replaced by the collective rigor of their agile unit. They were no longer sons, they were state assets. The environment itself was the mark. They slept on beds made of reeds gathered with bare hands from the Eurotas River, given a single tunic year-round, regardless of the cold. This constant calculated deprivation was designed to forge hardiness, but its true purpose was obedience. The boys were always hungry. This wasn't merely asceticism, it was training in stealth. They were encouraged to steal, yet beaten mercilessly if caught. A brutal lesson in cunning and the price of failure. Their childhoods were replaced by the rhythmic beat of the parade ground, the shock of the wooden practice sword, and the absolute unyielding authority of the paidonomos, the master of the boys. For some, a quiet will to resist surfaced not in open defiance, but in the stubborn refusal to break under the pressure. It was in the eyes of the boy who took the whipping without a flinch, or the one who shared his meager, stolen portion in the darkness. They were learning the Spartan value of enduring pain, yes, but they were also quietly building a secondary code, a brotherhood of shared suffering that the state had not intended. The state offered a hidden price wrapped in the mantle of mercy. The boy who survived the agoge would earn the highest social status, homoioi, the similars or peers. This was the ultimate reward, the promise of land, political voice, and the right to dine in the Syssitia. The hidden price was the permanent, crippling loss of individual human empathy. They were promised freedom, but only if they consented to the perpetual enslavement of others, specifically the helots, the subjugated population whose labor allowed the Spartan citizen to be a full-time soldier. This manufactured cruelty was the currency of their privilege. Did the state truly understand the price of perfect loyalty? Did the Spartan believe his suffering guaranteed his future? The final trial, the test of faith in the Spartan ideal, came in the form of the krypteia, the secret service. This was the dark purpose behind the lifelong schooling. The condition was stated openly, though never in a public decree. Comply and become a peer, securing your place in the most privileged caste, or vanish through failure, or worse, be recognized as a threat and suffer a swift, silent death. The newly graduated hoplites were unleashed upon the helots, the agricultural slaves who massively outnumbered the citizens. Clad in rough animal hides, armed only with a dagger, the young men were sent out into the fields and roads to kill. This was not war, it was sustained, ritualized terrorism. It was the moment of cold refusal, the refusal of the Spartan state to live without absolute control. The state demanded a single, cold refusal line from its young warriors. The refusal to acknowledge the humanity of the subjugated. They were taught that the helots were a perpetual animal threat, not people. Their single quiet refusal to hesitate was the proof of their completion. The escalation was immediate and total. There was no soft pressure here, only deprivation and murder. The young Spartan lived off the land, surviving by stealth in a landscape that was simultaneously their home and their killing ground. The systematic attacks introduced a silence into the night. The fear of the helots became palpable, a heavy, suffocating blanket that covered the entire Laconian plain. The agoge had inverted meaning. What was meant to break them had become their armor. The constant deprivation and the requirement to steal had honed their survival skills to a razor edge. The discipline, the years of physical hardship, became a shield against both fear and conscience. The vow of obedience was to the system, not a god, and the final silence was the wordless acceptance of their role as state executioners. This training meant to create perfect citizens, instead created perfect enforcers of an inhumane caste structure. The core why is resolved here. Sparta's economic and social stability depended entirely on the brutal enslavement of the helots. The citizen class had to be free to train and fight. This required a constant, stable labor source. The price of this freedom was eternal vigilance, and the cryptia was that vigilance codified into an annual purge. This practice was not merely about training, it was about managing existential dread. Records suggest this practice was in place by the late Archaic period and continued through the 4th century BCE. The fear the helots felt was the price the Spartan paid for his privilege. Did the master realize the fear he dealt was fear he breathed? What did the agage hide beneath the rhetoric of honor? The hidden truth was not found in the official archives of the stone Jerusia, but in the places the state neglected, the humble tombs and the scraped, forgotten record of the defeated. The rebirth of memory begins with a small, quiet sign tied to the motif of iron. The helots, unable to write histories, spoke through their tools. Archaeological excavation, particularly near Messenian villages subjugated by Sparta, has sometimes unearthed small, crudely fashioned iron charms or sickles buried alongside their dead, carefully aligned toward the Eurotas River, the river of the conquerors. This was not a weapon, but a wordless rite of memory. The act itself was a ceremony of defiance. The placement of these objects affirmed a Messenian identity that Sparta had relentlessly tried to erase for generations. It was a silent promise of return, a belief that even in death, their connection to the land persisted, anticipating a day when the iron shackles would be broken. This memory was passed down through oral tradition, a continuous whisper of lineage and injustice that official Spartan records could never touch. One cautious evidence cue surfaces through the writings of non-Spartan observers. The historian Thucydides, when detailing the aftermath of the great earthquake in 464 BCE, notes the immediate and opportunistic revolt of the helots, proving that their subjugation was a constant, fragile tension, not a resolved peace. This external documentation acts as a vital counterpoint to the Spartan narrative, which consistently minimized or ignored the internal threat. The hidden truth, now revealed, is that the Spartan system failed at its own stated goal. It created a powerful external fighting force, but it simultaneously fostered a permanent, existential internal conflict. The constant fear of the Helot uprising, known as the Helot problem, dictated Spartan policy more than any foreign invasion. The necessity of the cryptia, the need for citizen soldiers to remain eternally vigilant at home, limited their ability to project power abroad and ultimately hasten their decline. The perfect warrior was forged by fear, and that same fear was the acid that slowly ate away at the foundations of the polis. Their brutality was their greatest tactical error. Could fear truly be the strongest foundation for a state? What did the victors truly choose to forget? The final act of the Spartan Chronicle is one of erasure, not of the stone monuments which still stand, but of the internal human record. In the official rolls kept in the city, entries were blanked, names were burned from lineage records for un-Spartan behavior, often simply showing compassion or insufficient brutality, and the necessary ink to record the voices of the subjugated was perpetually withheld. The only history that survived was the one designed to glorify the machine. Yet, distant witnesses remain as whispers. The most poignant echo comes from the Athenian philosopher Plato, writing years after the systems peaked. He described the Spartan man as uneducated in music and philosophy, good only for war, carrying a kind of spiritual deformation caused by the agoge. These outsider views were not proofs of the inner mechanisms, but they suggested the severe psychological toll exacted by the constant fear and brutal training. They are not evidence, but a lingering doubt. We return to the opening image, but it is reframed. The iron disc of the elder, casting judgment in the silent dark, was not a tool of prophetic power, but an instrument of necessary self-destruction. The Spartans, in their pursuit of the perfect warrior, traded the future diversity of their gene pool and the stability of their internal politics for a brief, perfect moment of military dominance. The cry of the judged infant, the immediate shock of the cold night, was the very first sound of a state sacrificing its own long-term survival for short-term control. The brutality was an echo chamber. Every act of cruelty against the helots rebounded as a new restriction, a new fear, upon the Spartan citizen. Subscribe, hit the bell, and like. Does true victory require the willing murder of self?